Hey, you're watching Driver 88, and when I was growing up in the 90s and early 2000s here in Australia, the automotive landscape was dominated still, at least in my mind, by two key figures, locked in a feverish battle. It was the Ford Falcon versus the Holden Commodore. These cars were incredibly popular with Australians because they did almost everything. They could play roles as the work car, as the family hauler, as the adventurer's car, and also as the sports car. And people own them in absolute droves. Fast forward 25 years later today though, and these dinosaurs are long gone, and they've been replaced by, no, not just the medium-sized SUV, but by diesel dual cab utes here in Australia. In fact, 3 of the top 4 sold cars in this country last year in 2024 were the Ford Ranger, the Toyota Hilux, and the Isuzu D-Max. Every single week in this country of just 27 million people, 1,000 Rangers and 1,000 Hiluxes are bought every single week. And so these dual cabs are enormously popular because, once again, they play all the same roles. Sports cars, kind of, off-roading adventure cars, work cars, and family cars all in one. But these brands may have been resting on their laurels for a little bit too long, because the Chinese brands are coming thick and fast, and they are looking to take a big bite out of the cake that they've been enjoying over the last few years. So in comes BYD into Australia. This is a Chinese behemoth that started in 2003 and sells over 4 million cars per year. They are the most popular brand of car in China, and they have a whole host of subsidiary brands which are coming to our shores soon. Not only that, but we've got the Great Wall Cannon hybrid ute, and the response from the old players has already started. So we have a Kia Tasman hybrid which is coming soon, as well as a Ford Ranger hybrid. And when my friend told me that he had a Shark 6 coming for his business, I said, yes, I definitely want to try this new ute out. Is it just another cheap copy of the real deal, or is an absolutely new sea change about to hit the market and disrupt things in the Aussie automotive scene? Let's have a look. So what do you think of the looks of the thing? Personally, I think it doesn't look too bad. This was designed by Wolfgang Eggers, who's the same man who designed one of the most beautiful cars of all time, the Alfa Romeo 8C, and you can really see the resemblance with this ute, of course. A lot of people seem to really care about what their utes look like between the new Gooby BT50 and Ranger and stuff. Personally, I just see them as pieces of transport. They all look the same to me, so I don't really mind, but I wouldn't call it ugly, that's for sure. So performance is huge, believe it or not, from this little engine, 1.5 litres, turbo 4-cylinder, because it has 2 opposing electric motors on either side for a total of 430 horsepower and 650 newton meters. 0 to 100 comes up in 5.7 seconds, which I think is like the fastest ute in Australia, standard of its class. But there is another BYD brand called the Feng Changbao, and that has another call called the Feng Changbao Bao 5, and it has 670 horsepower, and it comes with the same chassis as this car. So one day we might get 670 horsepower Shark 6s, potentially, that will do 0 to 100 in 4.8 seconds. You've heard of Ranger danger before. Just imagine Feng Changbao danger in the left-hand lane. That would be quite scary. So the price for all of this starts at $60,000 here in Victoria. And if you want some extras, you can have them. These are the standard road-going wheels, which are perfectly fine for this use case, but you can get off-roading wheels and tires. You can also get a whole bunch of accessories, including an enormous bull bar to make sure that you create human casualties when you fall asleep on the freeway. And also comes with a tow ball, which I've been told there's a few issues with towing so far. Even though we have quite a decent 2.5 ton towing capacity braked, it's not entirely integrated into all your electrical systems and your safety systems so far, but that, much like the other off-roading modes, will probably be updated in coming weeks or months. So the rear of the Shark 6, we have lots of knee room and lots of headroom here. I'm 5'11" and I'm more than comfortable. It does get pretty damn hot in here quite quickly with all this faux leather, though we do have one of my favorite things and an essential here in Aussie land. It's that we have cooled seats. Thank God we have cooled seats. That is just a godsend. We've got aircon at the back as well as a whole bunch of amenities, 2 different chargers and power, which is great. When sitting in the front, you're met with 2 incredibly large screens. This one does do portrait, but I don't know why you'd want portrait. You can tell me in the comments. The rest of these touch points feel relatively cheap, but the aircon is great. The space is fantastic. You can see we've got so much. We've got charging pads. I do kind of like the ergonomics in general across the board in the interior. So we're living with the car so far. I can tell you that the aircon is excellent, which is a positive here in summer. And also, I'm not a particularly big fan of all the touch points here. So we have faux leather everywhere. The steering wheel, not a big fan of this sort of finish here on the steering wheel and the grip and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how well everything wears over a 5 or 7 year period. They may well perfectly wear fine, but they don't feel particularly premium, but we're not paying premium prices like in the VWs and the Ford Ranger. One thing I will say about living with this car is it's incredibly comfortable to start, of course, the car and get in and out of it, but the 360 camera in this BYD is one of the best I have ever seen. It is incredibly detailed, incredibly clear and easy to use. And of course that is very, very important in a large car and around sites and things. And of course visibility, being a utility vehicle, is brilliant. The other thing that's great about using this car day to day is that we are in almost perfect silence. Even on the freeway, you'll be able to hear me perfectly. It's so smooth to drive when you're just using, of course, the batteries. We're getting apparently 100 kilometers, but in the last couple of days, my mate who owns this car has said that running it around from his factory back and forth, he's going to more than likely get close to that 100 kilometer range just for the battery power alone. So this car is incredibly easy to get to 60 and 100 in our slow roads here in Australia, which is great around town. I've often found myself going a much faster than the speed limit because the car is so quiet and so sort of reserved in the way it goes about things. I will say this, with the regen braking, there's only 2 modes for regen braking, and high for me is pretty annoying because the inertia of the vehicle just kind of gets pulled forward when you take your foot off the accelerator. It's a bit too aggressive. Everything else here is really good. The screen, look, it's the way that a screen should be for 2025. Really responsive, really clear. I find a bit of an issue when I wear polarized sunglasses like these with not being able to see screens very well on a summer's day, and I can see this perfectly. There's a bit of reflection, but it's more than adequate for the job. Now this car is being bought by my mate who's giving it to a sales agent for his engineering company. So we're going to have heavy, I guess, equipment in the back, and it's going to be doing long miles. Now I understand that this car is going to be incredibly popular in Mexico and Brazil, where off-roading, just like here in Australia, is incredibly popular. That's not going to be the use case for this vehicle, but I understand that so many people want it to do so on top of all the other jobs. So this one's just going to stick with the road tires and won't really be doing that. The average fuel consumption that is supposed to be gotten to for this car is 7.5. You will not be getting that if you're going off-road. Of course, it can go all the way up to 20 liters, of course, once the battery drains and then you're revving the guts out of the petrol 4-cylinder. We have averaged 2.9 litres per 100 kilometres in the last few days. So take that as you will, but of course that's for just driving around town, driving to different job sites, driving to different factories, etc. For this use case. All right, I'm telling you, performance driving, this car turns and stops quite well for a body on frame chassis. We've got double wishbone suspension. You're coming into corners, I feel quite confident, even though I'm in a ute, to take corners quite quickly. And the turning circle's not great, but like turning through roundabouts and sportier driving, even though this is obviously not a sports car, it is really impressive. It does not feel like 2.7 tons. I wonder though, if you drive this thing for many kilometers every day, how quickly you're going to run through these tires given the enormous weight of the car. So on our steering wheel, we've got off-road and everyday mode switches here at the bottom of our steering wheel with eco, normal and sport. If we put it into sport mode, spun up the wheels a little bit. My goodness, that is seriously impressive. Not only very quiet, and somehow even in sport mode the engine didn't even turn on. So I'm assuming once we get to a particular state of charge, which you can toggle left to right, we will have our little 4-cylinder come to life, but not yet. We also have off-road modes. So on our right toggle, we've got muddy, sand and snow and mountain. And that changes the little background on the screen here. How exciting. Okay, so our little petrol engine has decided to turn on, and it is hard to stay at 60 kilometers per hour because this thing wants to go. 2.7 tons worth of ute, and the responsiveness, well, it's better than a diesel, I'll tell you that. The brakes, I mean, they feel okay. I haven't done any hard braking, but they certainly feel adequate. They feel the pedal throw is not too long and it feels quite comfortable, so can't complain. So I don't think too many people are going to be worried about the warranty with this car. We've got 6 years bumper to bumper and then 8 years for the battery, and that is 150,000 and 160,000 kilometers respectively. Yeah, for some reason this car seems to trigger a lot of people on Facebook, particularly Gen X people that like to spend most of their lives on Facebook complaining about things. They feel like they need to criticize this car for a whole bunch of reasons, or seemingly waste their time leaving laugh emojis on every single BYD post, which is a peculiarity. I don't think that they would dislike how quickly this gets to 80 kilometers per hour though. It is rapid. One of the reasons why people do criticize this car is their fear of Chinese, I guess, businesses and Communist Party backed businesses taking over certain industries with cheap but inferior products. This BYD, believe it or not, is actually publicly traded on the Hong Kong exchange. If you've ever heard of a guy called Warren Buffett and the late Charlie Munger, believe it or not, they were one of the biggest investors in this brand BYD all the way back in 2008, and they've subsequently made $4 billion USD since that time on their investment. So certainly doesn't feel too much of a communist only situation or affair going on with BYD compared to two other very popular brands in Australia, MG and Chery. They are 100% owned by the Chinese Communist Party. I don't really care either way, to be honest. I just want a good car, which is a decent price with a decent warranty that drives well. So despite only being on sale for a couple of months or so, the Shark 6 has already won the 2024 Car of the Year by News Corp Automotive, or Auto. I didn't even know that the Evil Empire had an Auto award before. It also has won the RACV Best Budget Ute, and it definitely is somehow, even at 60 grand, a budget ute, because If you want a pretty basic VW Amarok or Ford Ranger, you're looking at $75,000. One thing also I like about this car is there are so many intrusive assistant systems on cars today. My lane keeping assist in my Audi drives me flipping insane. It's borderline dangerous. This lane keeping assist is not too intrusive. It's just the right amount of letting you know and not annoying you. Now we're sitting on the freeway at 100 kilometers per hour. It is whisper quiet. There's not even that much wind noise. It's whisper quiet. So you can then, I guess, spend more time enjoying the Dyne Audio sound system rather than hearing anything else. So that is also another positive. All right, 0 to 100 test. Let's see how we go. Okay, I don't think you can brake boost this thing. Maybe you can. No? .8. All right, so we did a 6.0 and a 5.8. So that's pretty much close to the claimed speed. We're not on great surfaces and we've got two people in the car, empty tray. That's still really fast. I mean, a Raptor will do 6.0 seconds and that costs like $100,000 plus options. So very, very impressive for a $58,000 Shark 6. Pretty fast. I'm still hanging out for that Dongcheng Bao 5. I'm hanging out for that Bao 5. That's going to be uber fast. Build your dreams, make that car for Australia. So the way in which this suspension takes your speed bumps and bumps is fairly decent, but it is kind of peculiar. Every now and again you get a bit of shudder through the driveline and the tray kind of flexes a little bit and things get out of shape. But most of the time it's incredibly comfortable and will go over your usual potholes and all that sort of stuff very comfortably, as it should. Now as the average tradie, I feel like the sound system is pretty good. I just need to be tailgating someone in the left lane, beeping them and driving past my local high school 4 times in a day. One thing we have noticed in jumping in and out of this car is the door handles and closing the doors don't feel that premium, and you sort of have to slam them, but not in a good way, to make them feel like they're properly closed. I don't know how to describe it. Just is a little bit frustrating, and I think it would become frustrating if you used it every day. So the BYD, I think this is going to sell like absolute hotcakes. Take one for a test drive yourself and decide whether it's a car that maybe you want to lease for a multi-use work, leisure, family vehicle. It's probably at least 15% cheaper than the competition, and it sips fuel unless you want to go heavily off-roading. Really not a bad thing. This is Driver88. We'll see you next time.